Hello everyone, welcome to episode 11 of Tracknowledgement, the series where I delve behind the scenes into the sample production I do here in the studio. It's often for my hip-hop band Type 4, but recently I've been indulging in these sample challenges put forth by the Producers Corner group on Facebook, where they give all the producers a source material song. Here, sample from this. The idea being, show us what you can do. Show us your take on it, your spin on it, your flip. And it's been a lot of fun. So this week, sample challenge number 98 was a song called Skylab by this Belgian electronic group act called Electronic System. It's really just kind of one guy, Dan Laxman. The song was released the same year as Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and I wasn't the only producer to kind of notice the similar DNA there, the influence, the cross-pollination of kind of electronic prog rock synthy stuff, 73, 74. It's doubtful that Laxman was, that he ripped them off or whatever, but it's possible because Pink Floyd had been performing Dark Side of the Moon live for a year or so before they put the album out. But most likely it's just, as I said, shared DNA. It's of its time. But hearing how Floydian it was, I really wanted to combine it with some stuff from Dark Side of the Moon, and the first thing that came to mind was Claire Torrey's astonishing vocal solo from Great Gig in the Sky. So I knew I wanted to sample that, kind of isolate it and edit it and put it in over the Skylab stuff. But so the first thing I did is I started with the Electronic System song Skylab, and I sampled 5 or 6 different bits from the main song. So the first thing I did, the song is 14 minutes long, so there's a ton to it. And listening to it, nothing really jumped out at me. There was this intro I knew everyone was going to use, these chords, but where else? What else was there? What else could I do? And the only thing that jumped out at me in terms of a loop, the first thing that I heard was this. Which, it's not much to it really. It's just a drone, really, So I looped that, but then I kind of put it down for a day, went back to it, and tried to get more enthusiastic about it. So I did end up using that loop, but only at the very end of my piece as kind of a little accent. So then I went back in, and this is the intro to the Skylab song. It's sped up a lot. And what's interesting about this was hearing other producers' take on this. When the Producers Corner announces the source material here, this is the song you're all going to be sampling from, they send you to YouTube to check it out. And going to YouTube, looking up Electronic System Skylab, there's a bunch of different entries. And a lot of them have vinyl crackle, they're just from old records. So if you dig around enough, you could find some pretty good quality ones. But I ended up finding a copy that was actually under the name Dan Laxman. And it was a very clean master, no crackles at all. There was a bunch of tape hiss. So I threw it into Audition, put noise reduction on it, got rid of the hiss, put it back into Reason, and I got a pretty clean take on it. So that loops, it's just chords, tiny little piano, and then a little bass bend comes in at the end. And again, I knew everyone was going to use that, and just on its own, it's not enough there really. So I kept on looking through the Skylab song, found this loop, very Richard Wright, very Pink Floyd. So that, interestingly, the reason that these loops weren't jumping out at me at first going through is that there's a lot of stereo split on the original Electronic System song. There's a lot of stuff where this is going on the left channel, this is going on the right channel. And for these loops, I liked what was going on. I think it was in the right channel. It still had the beats, but it had all the pianos. And over on the other side were kind of horns and a lot more synth. And there was too much going on to really be a loop. So I did the kind of thing that I've been doing since sampling back in '87. If there's something on one channel that I like and on the other, just sample that channel, make it mono, put some stereo effect on it, and that's what I got. So this loop, also from this loop I was able to isolate the bass with a bass kick. And then a second loop, also, this has a bit more beat to it, but also just one channel, made two. Bringing the bass. Also at this point, that intro thing comes back in. Yes. Here I switch back to that first break with the piano, and I cut off the bass, so it just goes and stops. That intro thing is still in there. And finally, after this, it goes back to that first loop that I found, which I didn't like a lot, but I threw in there at the very end. As I said, I put a phaser and some reverb on it to kind of make it sit in there. So that's all the stuff really from the Electronic System song. Just edited, put where I want, EQ'd correctly, and so forth. Over that, I put a ton of beats. My standard combination of a bunch of break beats, edited and combined so that it's not just a break beat. And then my own drum machine stuff over it. So, starts off with the drum machine stuff, my own hi-hats and cymbals. Then there's a little breakdown. There's a clap. Turn the clap off, and then you hear this kind of a clangy break beat there. The beat comes in here. Which I was having trouble with the sound of that. I liked how kind of snappy it was, but I was having trouble with the snare. A lot of you producers will identify, commiserate with having problems with the sound of the snare, making the snare fit in the mix and complement the music and kind of punch. At first I had it tuned way down, so it was kind of a low flam snare, and that didn't work. I added a snare on my own kit and pitched that way up, but it kind of ended up empty like this. So what I actually did was I went way back, the old standards, and I sampled this. Honey Drippers, Impeach the President, you know, the second or third most sampled beat of all time. What I did is I pitched it up so it's kind of high and snappy, and I took out its signature open hi-hat so it's not as recognizable. But that gave me an element to the snare that I needed for the rest of this. picks up a bit with tambourine. Then towards the end, I brought in that beat with congas. And then at the very end, where that accent goes, that original loop, brought this in. Little California soul for you. I have no idea why. I wanted something different to go right at the end. So those are the beats. Apologize for the background noise. They're cutting down a tree next door. Perfect timing. Truck pulled up right as I was starting to record this. So, over that, I have the edits from Pink Floyd, the Claire Torrey stuff. Which is this. Which I chopped up, edited, put a noise gate and an echo on it. And this I left open. And that combined with the Skylab thing. So yeah, the Claire Torrey stuff fit really nicely once I edited it. But having had that female vocal in there, that kind of soulful vocal, something occurred to me that another producer had used, God, what is it, 26 years ago, something, which is this. Put it in with the beat. So way back, Domino in the song Sweet Potato Pie, great song. He used the Soul to Soul Back to Life a cappella, just like that, over the beat. And that goes in on beat, on key, with the music. I completely copied Domino on that. If you're old enough to remember that song, good. It's, you know, it's more of a tribute to him here. I also, as that comes in, I added piano. I mentioned in my write-up, my entry on SoundCloud, that this turned out a lot smoother than I thought it was going to, or in fact than I intended it to. And that just happens sometimes. You go into it thinking you're going to do like a head-knocking banger, you know, hip-hop thing, and you end up with Sweet Potato Pie, Chapter 2. Claire Torrey back in. go through of the main samples, I wanted to add some scratching. So I grabbed, honestly, I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't want to use just regular sounds, the standard scratching sounds. So I grabbed a JB's record, like a best of JB's record, and went in looking for little horn bits, and found this thing. Ended up scratching it on the 1200, adding some echo. Goes in on key. That's about it, what actually ended up in the song. There's one last thing I wanted to play. So, it being Pink Floyd, Great Gig in the Sky, if you've ever done the Wizard of Floyd thing, where you take Wizard of Oz, the video from Wizard of Oz, and you play the audio from Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and there's these odd synchronizations. And Great Gig in the Sky is the best part, because it's the tornado. As the tornado attacks, essentially, the Great Gig in the Sky song goes with Claire Torrey singing, and it's beautiful. So the first thing that occurred to me is this whole song I wanted to end with the sound of Dorothy arriving in Oz, when all the music swirling and the house lands suddenly and everything cuts off. Yeah, you can't hear it. Let me turn off all of this stuff that I added. Here she goes. Oh! So, that was originally my idea, but it got in the way of the Claire Torrey sample echoing out at the end, and I really like that. The other thing that I wanted, that I came really close to leaving this. I have a DVD which is the making of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. I'm a big Floydian, and if you're aware of the album, they put in all these little vocal samples, people talking about life and death and insanity and so forth. And the one guy, the roadie, I forget his name, Roger, I think. There's a lot of Rogers when it comes to Pink Floyd. Syd Barrett's real name was Roger Waters and all that. So there's this roadie, and he's the guy that this is... there is no Dark Side of the Moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all dark. And they played a couple of clips of stuff they didn't use. And he says this thing about, if you're going to use my voice, I better end up with a gold disc or something.
If I participate in this fucking effort, I'm going to get my gold disc at the end of it.
That was originally how I began it, and I added this big Pink Floyd echo on disc at the end of it. And it was right on beat and everything, but it just sounded a little cluttered. Plus, this thing is kind of a competition, the sample challenge, and to have a guy say, you know, if I'm going to put this effort in, I better get a gold disc at the end of it, was a little self-indulgent. So that's that. I really think this time I didn't forget anything. There's not a lot to it, really. It's only 2 minutes long. Some people really liked it, so that was cool, which is how, you know, why I do it, so people can hear it, get it, appreciate it. It means a lot. So thanks for taking the time to check this out. I'm going to try to do Sample Challenge 99, but I'm definitely going to do Sample Challenge 100. I have this really cool idea for it. Hopefully it'll work out. So stay tuned. More Tracknowledgement coming soon. And check out Type 4, type4music.com.